Colin was adopted from a Ukrainian orphanage. He was my first child. He made me a mom. Colin always had a strong work ethic, a tremendous servant's heart, and a playful and mischievous sense of humor, but really struggled in school because of ADHD and auditory processing disorder. After Colin graduated high school, his learning difficulties continued, and he eventually failed out. Colin spiraled into a deep depression and started to make really unwise choices in order to cope what he deemed as a hopeless future. I became anxious, realizing that I was not in control and unable to help him. Brian, my husband, and I really did all we could during that time to help support him as he lifted himself up out of that pit of despair that he got himself into. Eventually, Colin found an apprenticeship as a plumber, and within 3 years, he went from pulling himself out of a destructive pit to a very successful and well-respected tradesman. Colin longed to serve his community, and he and his soon-to-be fiancée, Emily, really wanted to join the fire department. Colin tried to go to as many trainings and fire calls as possible. Because of his trade job, he wasn't able to make as many as he wanted, but he always tried to make sure that when he was home, he was hitting all the calls that had come in. On October 20th, 2023, it started like a typical day until 9:02 p.m. My 25-year-old son, Colin, along with his girlfriend, Emily, were responding to a call, and he lost control of the car and died. I remember Brian collapsing to the floor and me just putting my hands up in my head and just shaking my head saying, "God, please give me a Lazarus moment." And I heard him loudly say no.
Growing up, I was a rule follower. You might say a good Catholic kid. After high school, when I was finishing up, I really didn't have a strong feeling about what I wanted to do next. But I decided to go off to college and pursue a degree because I felt like that's what was expected of me. After some time, I came to the conclusion that the only solution to get what I wanted was to work harder. I worked really hard. I transferred schools, graduated, I found a job. Everything was going great. I rarely went to church. Maybe Christmas and Easter, that was about it, really just to make my mom happy. Around that time was the same time that a lot of the allegations and stories and reporting was coming out about church abuse that was going on, and I was just disgusted. I didn't understand how these men that were supposed to be closer to God could do such things. I was confused and didn't understand how everything that I'd been taught about religion and faith throughout my life could be true if it could result in this kind of evil. And that's when I really started to doubt my faith and really doubt the value that religion was bringing to the world. So for the next 15 or 20 years, I was checking all the boxes. Landed a great job, check. Get married, check. Have kids, check, check. I was on the path, I was successful, I was happy, right? My wife and I really never settled roots in a church in our community. We tried several churches, but nothing ever really clicked. And for me, honestly, I just didn't feel the need for it in my life. Then on January 23rd, 2021, it was a typical COVID Saturday night, and I noticed that there was something going on with my son. And, during that time, there was a lot of worry in the world about a lot of things, but one of the things specifically in our community was around kids and their mental health and how they were dealing with the isolation and being away from their friends. So I was worried for him. And I pulled him aside to talk with him about it and see what was on his mind. And he went somewhere I was not expecting. He looked me in the eye and he said, "I'm worried you're going to hell."
While I was in college, I was asked to speak at a Bible club movement at a local high school. Man, was I so excited about that. It was my first time speaking to teenagers. And as I was speaking to this Bible club, I'm also talking to God. And I'm saying, wow, God, this is great. I'm having so much fun. I could do this for the rest of my life. I had the privilege of living out that calling for 20 years. And I was just so excited to be a youth pastor. In fact, I thought I was going to be a youth pastor for life. But in 2008, I had some very deep-rooted issues that I hid from other people, issues that I hid from myself. I ended up stealing money from my church, and I ended up committing adultery with a woman from my church. And my life just spiraled downward. I remember as a youth pastor, I was running from God, and I knew it. I was so discouraged, but I kept running. And it wasn't until God decided, Todd, it's time to come forward. And when I came forward, it was still the hardest thing I ever done. I never thought a person could feel so much pain and still be alive. Because of all my years of lying and denying that anything was wrong, I ended up losing my job. My wife started dating my best friend and divorced me. And through all of that pain and agony, I felt disgraced and disqualified. I felt disgraced and disqualified as a husband, as a father, as a pastor, as a Christian. It was the most excruciating moment in my life. The calling as a youth pastor was over.
Was not in control.
I was running from God, and I knew it.
He said, "I'm worried you're going to hell."
God, please give me a Lazarus moment.
It was the most excruciating moment in my life.
So what my son said to me really shook me. But the reality was, I'd been feeding my skepticism and my doubt about my faith and religion for almost 20 years. So I needed to be convinced.
I just began thanking God for all the years that he had gifted Colin to me. And then I asked him to show me the fruit that was going to come out of his death.
Life is hard when you walk around wherever you go and you feel disqualified. But Jesus Christ stepped into my disqualification, and he led me here to a church family that encouraged me to get involved and serve others.
And then I heard something from Tim Keller where he said, the first question that seekers need to answer is whether or not the resurrection of Jesus from the grave was true. If that didn't happen, then whatever the Bible says doesn't really matter anyway. But if it did happen, then that meant that he was telling the truth and that he was God.
Monday morning, I was sitting in my bedroom and I was just sobbing, and I was pleading to God to please show me a tangible sign that Colin was in heaven with him. And I mean, I was pleading, and I just kept saying, show me a tangible sign, show me a tangible sign. When I arrived at the funeral home, I had this overwhelming need to see Colin's hands. And when I did, there was a bruise in the shape of a cross on his right hand. And I felt this amazing relief and knowledge that God had answered my prayer, and that this was the tangible sign that I had begged him for earlier that morning.
As Jesus Christ helped me to understand that I cannot be disqualified from serving him, whenever I hear about another friend of mine, another pastor that struggles or is involved in any sexual brokenness issues, I'm going to go after them. I'm going to care about them. I'm going to do what Jesus did for me. I'm going to step into their so-called disqualification. I'm going to share my story with them. I'm going to share how God has helped me to understand how to get back on track, how to get back on target.
So one day I was on my way to work, and I remember having this thought where I said, what if I get to that place where I really believe that Jesus was the Son of God and he died for my sins to give me away? And I remember doing something that I can only say was maybe the first time I'd ever really done it. And that was, I talked to God and I just said, thank you for giving me the time to get right with you. And I just started smiling and even laughing a little bit, because I knew in that moment something had changed. So I still have doubts, but it's different now. It's more like uncertainties. I don't have doubts about the big thing. The question that I was on a mission to answer got answered. It's just the little stuff. It's just the details now that I'm trying to figure out.
Mary Magdalene showed up at the tomb to prepare Jesus' body after his death, the same way that I was going to the funeral home to prepare Colin's. Jesus showed up for the both of us. He called Mary's name when she couldn't see him through her grief, the same way that he showed up in the reassurance that he had Colin by showing me that mark on his hand. I'm going to continue to grow in my walk with the Lord, and I am going to use this tragedy as a platform to share the love of Christ and his message with as many people as I can. It's the fruit that I prayed for at the scene of the accident, and it is part of my story and my purpose.
But God uses my story to bring hope and healing and emotional health to so many people. And that's what Jesus did with Peter. That's what he has done with me. He stepped into my disqualification to let me know you can never be disqualified from serving him.
So later that day, I was in the car with my son, and I'd made a point to wait to tell him till we were together. And I told him what happened that morning. And he was so excited, and I was so excited. And we just, shared that moment together of joy and happiness. And it's something I'll never forget.